for November,
Recording in progress, sorry.
for November 13th, 2024. We are recording. The first item of issue, first item on the agenda is public comment, which per our previously agreed process is we invite the public to speak on subjects which are not on the agenda for up to 3 minutes apiece. So when you are here, are you speaking on agenda items or other items?
Other items, I'd like to make some comments on previous minutes. September 25th minutes. Discussion of allowing renewable natural gas as a clean heat source. We should consider that no more than 10% of gas flowing as renewable natural gas is from farm or landfill generated sources, and that natural gas would have trouble even meeting that percentage. This ordinance is tend to reduce, eliminate the CO2 from our air. We should not be encouraging investment in a product. I'll do the opposite, as we should not be encouraging the use of other false choices, such as advanced wood heating that also adds to the heating of our planet. Therefore, think that no gas or RNG be allowed in the ordinance. October 9 meeting, the memo, the progress on town's energy goals. The 10/2/2024 document. In general, there's a discussion of grants that the town has received. Is there a place we can find out what those grants are and what they're funding?
There is more detailed information. There's an agenda item for today, which gives detailed information about the amount of the grants and where they came from. And Melinda can speak to those along with us. So that's down in the fiscal year 25 work plan discussion item for today.
Okay, great.
Good. Brian, it sounds like you're referring to that memo. So it should be in the memo somewhere.
The 10/8, you're looking at a memo from 10/18/24.
10/2/24.
There's one that's
It's the same, basically, yeah.
It's a memo, but I didn't see anything down further in that memo regarding those grants. If it's going to be discussed tonight, that's great.
I mean, really, I just put it there so that you know that it was there and folks could read it. I don't think there's gonna be too much discussion about
not
it.
discussion, but the fact that there's a paragraph detailing information about it.
Mhm.
Okay, under that, in that memo, we're drawing the transportation. Is there any further talk towards funding the proposed multimodal for Taft Corners? Any discussion about using ARPA money for any of that? Is that an ongoing discussion, or is it tabled and not being?
I think it's planning commission.
It's pretty much tabled, as far as like the town's concerned. We did a feasibility study. And, now especially that, GMT is reducing their routes, we basically would partner with them. It would be a transit station for GMT. And, they don't have the money or financial capacity to consider, having a new transit station right now, so it's tabled basically.
And the building energy, the household energy survey. Did the survey solicit enough information to compile a list of homes that need weatherization for use when funding becomes available?
Yeah. I had 3 minutes and you exceeded it. So we'll try. You want to address that?
That's it.
Yeah, the survey was,
Thank you.
it was 500 or so, a little over 500 people, so it was not a census of the town. So given that, there's really no way that we can come up with a list of homes that need to be weatherized unless we were to census every household and basically get that information that way. And then it really would be up to individual households whether they wanted to weatherize or not.
Right, so there's no intention to compile this of homes that did the survey,
I don't think there's any way that we could do that.
okay. Did the survey ask if the houses had the flood rights?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Kim is online. Do you have any public comment or are you here for other issues?
I don't have public comment at this time. I may address other issues as you get to them. Thanks, though.
Right. Thank you, Marion. Okay, moving on, approval of minutes of October 9th. We did not have a meeting last time due to lack of quorum. So we have the October 9th, which talked extensively about the energy fair that we had held recently. And moved into discussion on the clean heat ordinance. And fiscal year 25 work plan, which has been tabled, that is now on tonight's issue. And 3 miscellaneous ones, and Eric, thank you for writing the last Observer article. So. Do I hear a motion is there any discussion on these or corrections? No,
I didn't find it.
no? Okay. Is there a motion to adopt the minutes of, it says September 25th.
Yeah, so that's a
But
correction.
it's, October, yeah, it's
It's just-
October 9.
Yeah, it's just.
The header is just incorrect, that's all. Of October 9th, 2024 as presented,
I moved.
a second,
A second.
okay? All in favor of adopting minutes of October 9th, 2024 with a minor change to the header, say aye. Aye. Ayes have it, okay, thank you. All right. The next major topic, good, we're right on time. Fiscal year 25 work plan. We started with, okay, you want to jump to this one, okay, good. So if I can recall back, we had a bunch of topics we talked about and said, who would like to take the lead on each of these, and so do we want to go through and review, discuss, make sure this is what we want to do?
It looked fine to me, or at least matched my memory.
The pop-up events doesn't have anything, you can put my name there.
Okay. So it sounds like the one that's. Well, a couple of ones that didn't really, garner any support is this one, encourage local businesses to adopt PMD policies and conduct a solarized campaign, which is fine, so you can, you can strike those, or maybe if you want to do them some other year, or just leave them and whatever,
Yeah, it's knocking on doors, separate proposal, yeah, basically.
Yeah, the solarized one kind of goes with the one above it, which I did put my name on. I mean, really, do we, how much are we promoting? Solar's been an individual thing for people, they choose to put them on the roof, and we have, but we don't really have community solar, and we don't really have a plan for helping people in the low income area. And the big question was, do residents want to participate? We haven't done the research with public service or GMP to really talk about those, yeah.
Yeah, so the Solar for All program is just starting to roll out and get organized, which would be a sort of the community solar. So I would definitely leave that, and that could just simply be outreach and notification. I don't know that we'd have a whole lot more to do than that. That seems to be like an easy lift for us. But yeah, individual net metering is gonna be much more difficult.
My question was, how would this work? For the lead person, is it up to the lead person to sort of do this on their own outside of the meeting and spearhead it? Or is it if the energy committee decides to take on a project and it falls under your category, then you become the lead person on that? I just kinda
Yeah,
picture how
so
it
if you think of it as a work group outside of this meeting,
Yeah,
you kind of take the lead on that, but it doesn't mean you do all the research on all the things, you know. Some of it is easier, like I just put my name on pop-up events, I mean. We can talk about how we've done those in the past, and that one's pretty straightforward, but some of these other ones are much. Much larger. Projects that would take multiple people talking about them and doing research. The question is, really, I mean, there's a lot of different things here. Is this what we want to do over the next year? Yeah. Some are continuations of what we have had, like having an energy fair, writing articles, giving out energy kits that Vermont Gas gives us, and really figuring out how to distribute those. Those are pretty straightforward, but these other ones, is this what we want to do to promote energy efficiency for the benefit of the town as a whole? So that's the discussion. Do we want to leave things in here, take them out?
Well, how long do you think the work we're working on the clean heat standard is gonna take? And it's not in here, right? So.
Yeah,
Is it in?
it is
It's
somewhere.
in, under planning commission because. Wait a minute. Yeah,
Select board,
where's this?
it's at the very top.
Adopt a clean heat ordinance,
yeah,
give
clean.
feedback, that's just one
Okay.
item, one bullet point. I mean, there's many more
Okay, and
bullet
that's,
points to
it
do.
just says select board, so it doesn't,
Select board is the owner.
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
but we get feedback from developers. Okay, we've already done that, so we're not
We're not done.
done.
No,
So, yeah.
no, there's more
Maybe,
bullet
okay.
points to add to this.
Yeah.
No,
That's,
great. I mean, we're already also getting feedback from individual homeowners via the Observer and Front Porch Forum over the last couple of weeks. Because we did publish an article.
Right, and we saw Kevin Thorley's response on Front Porch Forum is very good from his experience, and
And we got a rebuttal the next day on Front Porch Forum.
hardly terribly written.
Well,
Wow.
yes.
Again,
But-
fourth grade, third grade.
So there's more. Because if we do this as an ordinance, Melinda, then we have to do. Public meetings,
well, so.
I kind of want to know.
So where the energy committee is really involved in this is, you've, done some outreach. You've gotten some feedback, and now the next step is really to draft your recommendations. And then basically then it goes on to the select board. And, they'll have another meeting. And consider your recommendations, and then they'll, at that point, make. Another decision about whether they want to move forward and have staff draft the ordinance, or whether they decide they change their minds and they don't want to go there anymore. So
Or
there's,
kick it back to us, they could do that too, and say. Refine such and such.
Come up with something different.
Yeah. Or comp.
Possibly, yeah.
I think if we don't want it kicked back, we want to either give it a yes or a no, then it's our interest of whatever we write for recommendation that we've done enough research and outreach ourselves beforehand. And maybe be getting beyond the scope of this document though. So,
Mhm.
so this document though is a fiscal year plan. Do we? You know, they're not all equal. Do we? Prioritize them, set a priority on them? Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, and a lot of them are just, should just be ongoing. Like the committee, the energy committee website's an ongoing, and pop-up events are ongoing.
Right. So do you break these into ongoing, really big research items,
Yeah,
future thoughts, and then prioritize within those?
yeah.
I mean, the thing is. The purpose of a work plan for you is to kind of. Sketch out some activities that you can do over the next year or two, right? But. You could get so sort of, it can cause paralysis too. Oh, here's Marcy.
Because you can't move on to the next until you do it.
Well, no, more so in that, like, we're already into. We've had the first quarter of this year pass by and we're still working on finalizing the work plan. So you can get so paralyzed in trying to make it perfect.
I make
That
a
you
motion to
never-
call it the fiscal year 25-26 plan.
Okay, content is good, move on.
I mean, I don't know, that's just. From my perspective, I'm certainly, if you would like, and if it would be helpful, I'm certainly willing to,
Well, yeah, the other one, the other
No.
spreadsheet was color coordinated for,
do you want me to?
no, not necessarily, I never could read that one.
I can do that. It's
No,
not,
no,
not-
no.
I mean, each item as an owner, I
Yeah.
think it'd be up to the owner to sort of take it on, and if they can't take it on, to tell us.
Hmm.
It's certainly enough to take on, there's a lot here.
Yeah, you and Kevin have contact here.
Okay.
Are there any dates associated with these items?
Not yet, at this point, it's a.
Not the first quarter.
Right.
It all happened already. No.
Well, then I think it is in our interest that if we put our names next to something, we could at least look at it and say, okay, in our mind, send some bullet list back to us as a committee
Mhm.
that says, okay, what does it mean to adopt EV requirement for new developments? And Kevin Thorley would come up with some ideas, whether it's how to approach it. It doesn't have to be a, a big thesis, it's just
Mhm.
some bullet points.
Mhm.
And, hold the energy fair, well. Start planning 12 weeks ahead, just like we've been doing, and put it out there and decide how we're gonna do it and so on. So that when we come back. Either in 2 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever,
Mhm.
we can say, oh, look. There's one that's just gonna be ongoing and we know how it's gonna work, or there's one that really needs some more research and And who's gonna help us because of the outside organizations, especially when you talk about the bike ped network and, was Kevin, you've been a champion of, how do we get bigger
we've
projects like
identified-
that?
We're
going?
working on two gaps.
Yeah.
Or my group we met today.
Um. Here's a suggestion, and that's the, if you have your name next to an item and you get inspired to work on it, to think a little bit more about it. And then, you come up with some ideas and you want to present them to the committee. You could request, from the chair, could say, hey, Kevin, can we, put this on the agenda for next time? I have some ideas about like, pop-up events I'd like to propose. So that would be kind of one way of kind of taking charge of your project that you're working on and having some accountability.
Could be at the end of the year or beginning of the new year, just have like everyone just has a 2 bullet status of like,
Mhm.
is it moving or plan,
Mhm.
on each of the items, so we just keep a quick way of tracking it, but
Yeah, and
not getting bogged down.
yeah, and like, for example, Kevin, I know you've been doing a lot of work with Safe Routes with Williston on the Move. So, maybe at some point, if you want to give an update as to,
Yeah, sure.
sort of like the list of stuff you guys are working on.
Okay.
Mhm.
Speaking of which, in that dead spot, I hate to take off, I should have done out the open comments in the beginning, was that some bicyclist was killed by a
Oh, yeah.
cruiser yesterday, sometime in the night, and
I saw that guy.
and it's the second time on Route 7 this year.
Mhm.
And so the local motion feels that there's a need to open up that corridor. And they have a really good plan, but they have a petition, so if you wanna go to the local motion website and sign the petition to say, state, look at this.
Mhm.
Sorry. to break into the meeting.
All right, so it seems there's this consensus that we'll each individually look at this and see what we put our name on and see how we can begin to work on these pieces and come up with some discussion items to be put on the agendas. Probably not all 35 items all at once, but we'll do it.
Mhm.
Did you want to talk about your progress? More,
Let me see.
just actually on the agenda.
I mean, I don't know, I would say it's probably not necessary unless you.
I'll link to Brian's comment about
Oh,
general
something like that.
pathways, grant funding.
Oh, yeah,
please.
I mean, I could see if that.
So-
Yeah, okay, so I can speak briefly to the grants, if I can't make this bigger. So we got a grant, Mobility and Transportation Innovations Grant, that was last year. 26,000 to have a feasibility study done, to study feasibility of microtransit in Williston. And that's another thing, we got some information, probably not gonna do anything with it at this time. We figured out, what it would take, how much it would cost, etc. We also got an energy efficiency and conservation block grant for $75,000 and spent it to buy electric mowers and an electric line striper for the recreation department. And maybe you've seen those around, the green mowers. And we're also getting some technical assistance eventually to to basically consider what it would take to establish a revolving loan fund for energy projects. And then the Climate Catalyst and Innovation Grant for $3,000 paid for the survey on home energy and, you know, those 500 plus households, plus doing some other outreach related to that and getting energy saving materials to distribute. And then the Municipal Energy Resilience Program Community Capacity Grant, that's a mouthful, for $4,000. We still have a bunch of that, a lot of that left. We spent some of it on the Energy Fair last year, and some of it, you know, one use of that, one possible use of that grant fund would be to buy some trolleys to distribute some you know, walk to shop trolleys. But yeah, you know, that needs to be spent, I think, by the end of next year. And so that's grant funding. I'm trying to think if there's any other grant funding. Probably not. Yeah.
It was a great report. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
There.
Yeah.
So as you mentioned. Go back to the agenda, walk to shop trolleys. This is one that I'm personally interested in. We had them at the Energy Fair. I was familiar with them before because through volunteer work I've done at the Food Shelf, they have expanded from giving out one or two to having quite an extensive program. So how could you?
Oh, sure, you want me to?
Yeah, I do want to see that.
Okay.
So it has occurred to me that in many instances where the senior housing is within walkable distance of some of the shopping around here, I have personally noticed people who live in those carrying bags of groceries and struggling to do so. And at our energy fair, they had a pretty good demo because they have like a 40-pound bag of sand and they put it in the, just say, pick it up. Oh, that's a lot of weight. Drop it in the trolley and see how it is. And it works, you know, it helps people a lot. If we have grant money and we can approach some of these senior centers and say, do you have some of your residents who could benefit from one of these? It might be a way to reach out and help people who are not driving today. They're probably walking to Shaw's, maybe Healthy Living, but probably Shaw's from the 3 or 4 units that are in the general Taft Corners area. Senior
Unless
housing
they get
units.
across Route 2A, huh?
Well, they do, because I see them, you know, yes.
But they could, those residence houses are an excellent place because you don't have to give it to the resident. You can give it to, they could,
Yeah, and
you know, have one in a lockup and,
Right.
and take it out, ask for a key and get it,
because just around the area
share it.
behind M&T Bank and the post office area, there's 3 different buildings over there
Yeah.
that have senior housing in them. And there's the one that's over near the little shopping around Talcott and so
Yeah, right.
there's 4 right there.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of the people in the subsidized housing that's in Maple Tree are already food shelf clientele, so they've
Yeah,
been
Maple
approached
Tree.
already.
Oh, okay.
You know, and so it's an idea. These things have prices associated with them, but if we have money and a means and you know, it's it seems like an interesting way to, you know, even if you gave out 6, you know, it would be something, like you say, could a shared one, it could be, yeah. Cause I said,
Yeah, that would be a good use of, any of these grants.
you know, I offered a guy a ride one day because he had 2 giant bags and he was going about 10 feet and putting them down. And he wouldn't take a ride from me, you know, he saw that I lived right on Zephyr. He was walking down Zephyr, heading back towards to cross 2A, you know, and and he'd go and struggle.
Zephyr Place would be another place,
Yeah,
Zephyr Place.
yeah. And he lived on the other side of 2A,
Mm.
over in those places, you know, there's 3 different senior housing units over there.
Mm.
Wow, that's a haul.
So. How much did we have left in that 4th grant?
The $4,000.
Yeah,
I think we have spent maybe around 1,000, so
oh,
we have,
so.
we have a lot of money. So
So
like,
so now that I had my spiel, does that seem like a good thing for us to investigate?
Yeah, I think there's 5 or 6 and try to get the senior housing. See how they can manage it.
There are 2 different sizes of. the
Yeah, there are,
right?
you
Medium
roll
and
this up, it
large.
shows
Yeah.
pricing down and later in
We
this.
could get a variety of
It's like-
sizes.
it's like 50 for the large, or 55 for the large and 45 for the medium.
So they're not really expensive,
No.
you know, not overly expensive, and they're quite rugged, you know.
Yeah. I mean, you could start out by maybe buying like 10. And then, see if you can distribute those out. And if it's really popular and there's a huge demand, you can get more.
I think I'd like to do some outreach before we buy anything, to see if there's an interest at these housing places, you know.
Mhm.
And some don't have resident, caretakers that administer that stuff,
Mhm.
just nobody there. Like
Do we have the
Resident.
ability to store a bunch of those here in the meantime, or?
In the
we just have to make
meantime,
sure we give them all out.
Yeah,
no, in the meantime, we could store them here, yeah,
yeah.
not permanently, but
Yeah.
you know.
Well, they're safe for long.
Yeah,
And also, we could keep 1 or 2 for if we wanted to raffle them off at our events or something like
We
that.
actually did it at the energy fair, that was one of our.
Oh, that was
Yeah,
one of them?
very
one of
popular.
my neighbors won it, this couple, that are about my age. And they walk to the grocery stores.
Okay.
So they don't necessarily drive, even though they've got 2 cars, you know, and they said, they love it, they're gonna use it, you know, so.
Yeah,
It's
I
awesome.
mean, that's the whole point, you
Yeah,
know. if you
yeah.
can
And they're not
use
living in
those
senior
reactors.
housing, they're living on Zephyr Road, you know, just down the street from me. And they actually they were thrilled when they got to get that best of
Yeah.
price, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
All right, why don't I do some investigation as to who to talk to at these different places?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can help you
Okay.
suss that out too. Okay.
All right. Any other comments on this section? God, we're ahead of time. All right, clean heat ordinance. We do have results.
You want me to bring those up?
Yes, please. Developers,
Try to make them bigger,
control plus, oh, there you go,
great.
yeah. So who did you approach?
Well, I sent these out. We have like a developer list. And there's, I don't know, maybe 50 or so. And I sent it out to everybody.
I see,
All the developers I knew some who have developed here, others who haven't, but might. And got 6 responses. A couple of those, I believe, were from members of the housing committee, because I had CC'd them on the And so I didn't intend for them to take the survey, but it's okay, it's feedback, you know? But anyway, there's quite a variety of kinds of development that that are represented, I guess, you know. commercial
The
mix.
pie chart goes just saying the 6 responses and.
It's,
I don't know.
you don't understand, it's the categories of, so.
Okay, it just matches, okay,
Yeah,
so it just says
matches
there's
the-
6 responses and
Right.
there.
Each one of them does
and they
something
have-
different.
okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah,
So each one fit.
All right,
It's right, yeah. So typical of a
Right.
survey, you
Try to
send
read
out
more into
50
it.
requests, you get 6 back.
That's
Yeah,
pretty good.
yeah, actually it is. Yeah.
anyway. Yeah, all right,
I couldn't
then-
read all the tags.
yeah, I
in the
know,
purple area,
it's all right, it's kind of,
Mhm.
oh, I see,
On the left side.
yeah, so. I think I have developed a residential project in Williston. I'm currently constructing a residential project in Williston. I have developed a commercial or residential, I believe, currently constructing a commercial project. I have final plan approval. My project is currently undergoing construction. I am considering developing a residential project in Williston. And I'm considering developing, I don't know, it's probably mixed use or something,
Mhm.
and then none of the above. And then I asked how many were developing projects in either South Burlington or Burlington, and only one was Chris Snyder. Responded yes. And then, you know, Chris, I guess, said that if you are building a project under a requirement of clean heat ordinance, the impact this requirement has on the cost of your project, he said the requirement increased costs substantially. What adjustments, if any, were needed, increase in rental rate or sales price, changes in building materials, reducing other energy efficiency measures.
I thought that third one, that surprised me,
Hmm,
that if you are putting in a clean heat, you know, a high vac system, why would you reduce other energy efficiency measures?
yeah,
Buy cheaper windows or.
Yeah, but that's just like, that's just
Yeah,
like-
that's
That's
what it
otherwise
must
your money would
be.
go to buying that HVAC system.
Yeah, I know.
huh,
I suppose you've got a budget, so you're,
You would think you would have. you'd
but
do
there's so
more.
many rules. I mean, I suppose you can buy less expensive windows, but it isn't like you can go, I'll put less insulation in the attic, you know, because they can't get around that.
It's not like you're buying triple pane anyway, you know, like it's
No.
not exactly top of the line, so.
mhm,
I mean, you would think that you would, you know, make the system more efficient by doing better insulation, better sealing, as some of the comments down below say.
Right, but that's not their incentive, right? They're incentivized to, you know, meet the ordinance at the lowest cost.
Yeah,
I mean, to be clear. Snyder's project in South Burlington is also subject to stretch code because. He would have gone through Act 250 for that.
Right.
So it's, you know, the energy efficiency standards are pretty stringent. Anyway. And then, you know, I asked, did this prevent affordable housing to be included yeah. Did it prevent the inclusion of affordable homes where they otherwise would have been included? And he just said not applicable because no affordable homes were planned. And then
Those were his
there's,
South Burlington development.
yeah,
Yes,
correct.
Yes.
So, yeah, so there's a lot of, comments. And I'm not gonna
equipment
read,
lifespan, I don't know about that,
well,
you know, they're saying,
said 18
I
to
mean,
25 years.
my. Gas system that I had, which I don't use very much, they say it's 11 years old, no, it's getting old, you wanna replace it, so, you know, so.
Yeah.
And them saying 18 to 25 years is
It could be because they're very.
an
extremely
oil
large.
system or a coal furnace.
But these comments are specific, at least the first ones were specific to multi-tenant
Mhm.
Which is a trickier problem to solve.
Yeah,
Yeah, there were. Let's see. I know, yeah, there were a couple of responses that. I know were developers that primarily, build multi-tenant, apartments. Or multi-unit homes. And they have a sort of a specific, set of challenges there that they commented on.
Did everyone provide comments, or is this just one or two folks?
I think everybody did. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I looked at the individual responses and. Yeah. I think that was good.
Yeah, I think when reading through this was like kind of a. Because the comments don't relate to one another necessarily, they're from each
Yeah, I
of
was
the
just
six
curious, I mean, if
people,
it's like
yeah,
two people,
yeah.
it's different than six.
At least the first
Yeah.
step, so the one that talks about. The exterior rigid insulation, is that building energy? That did that?
No. I know. Yeah, I.
there it is. It's right in the middle of the page.
Yeah, it is, it's
This
right
one.
there, but I mean,
I know this guy. Yeah, he is not a developer of multi-unit buildings. He develops. Mostly commercial, but a few single-family homes.
Okay,
So, in light of all this, is the state coming up with, is there something that's coming from the state that we don't, we're trying to make all these guesses. And. Based on what South Burlington did and Burlington's doing, but is it, what's coming from the state, are they?
The Affordable Heat Act.
Yeah.
My sense is that that's probably,
Gonna be killed because of the
Probably.
veto override, yeah.
I
Well,
think
maybe
it's,
they change
I
over,
mean,
yeah.
you can speak to it probably more than I can.
Yeah, and there's, yeah, and the PUC provided some comments that aren't, I would say, favorable. And then the supermajority is now lost in the
Yeah,
legislature, which I think will lead to some changes.
yeah.
So change is not necessarily killing it, though,
Yeah, if they kill it off entirely, that'd be, I think, a little surprising, just because of all the
Mhm.
effort that's gone into it.
Mhm.
But there'll definitely be some changes, and I know, just in terms of what I do, the legislative priority is focused on the affordable clean heat standard.
No affordable clean heat center. Okay.
Mhm.
this whole comment
and-
in the center, because this started last year when the state, I think, proposed. Reading through this,
The state lawmakers don't understand, building science and ignore.
so there were. It isn't the Affordable Heat Act, but there was other proposed legislation to.
The building efficiency,
Yeah, I think so, and there was a lot of pushback from developers on that.
yeah, I don't think that, I don't think.
It
that-
didn't go through, but I think this is what this center of this piece talks about here, you know.
Yeah, I don't know this for certain, but I've heard just in Stowe that EVT has put out some different guidance on R values, which maybe is what he's conflating two different things.
Yeah, it was kind of hard to, a little hard to follow this,
Mhm.
honestly.
I mean, I guess the thrust of it is that you need a pretty tight structure to make the heat pump workable and. The tight structure, if not properly executed, would
Right,
rot away, I guess.
and we don't have really building inspectors, they, all you have to do is look at the library, and well, I guess it's an older building, but still, it's like,
Not that old.
insulation just fell down. It wasn't being held by the walls, so it just fell down, so you should take your thermal Oh, they
Yeah.
might, yeah.
Well, the insulation's at the bottom of the wall.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, and so we had a infrared camera and we were looking at it, which is crazy.
Mhm.
And then there was a building in South Burlington with, where, the electronics store is, the Apple store, Small Dog,
Yeah.
and how that, I don't know if you've heard of those problems, but
Yes.
the tenants, it was a brand new building, and tenants are just like, I'm freezing in here, and they went through this, like terrible insulation and leaks in a brand new building, so there's no, less,
And that's within the city of Burlington, which has a building inspector, you know.
well, yeah. Hopefully it's wised up.
This is, the comments about this now, again, I didn't quite understand about, but. The exterior sheathing and making sure you don't have a moisture problem, because down south. They ended up having a problem with, rigid concrete siding on single family houses, and they rotted a lot of houses out down there.
Oh, interesting.
So the moisture got trapped in between, and people discovered it when they opened their kitchen cabinets and the water came roaring in. And then they started taking the houses apart and they were basically destroyed. By the moisture being, so of course, they have higher humidity levels down there, but it was just built. And it trapped all this moisture and it ruined everything from small retirement homes to multi-million-dollar mansions on the coast. You know, it didn't matter what they were using this hardy plank, and it was trapping moisture.
First, equitable.
Everybody.
I mean, yeah, kind of what I think about too is just building science has gone through a lot of different phases and changes over the last 20 years or so. And what was considered, to be like, the way to do it back in the early 2000s, with the vapor barrier sandwich or whatever is like now, they're not doing that anymore. And so it's like, it sort of, I don't know, gives one pause, like it may continue to evolve and yeah.
Yeah, so a question on that is that, you can't really say this is the way to do it, right? If you. Or I'm asking, it's more of a question, because
Yeah,
if you say, because then you're telling people, or the state or the town is telling people what materials they have to use and how they have to use them. So you have a trade-off there between having regulations and standards, but without forcing people to buy DuPont and pink
yeah.
rigid foam or something like that. I don't know. Anyone have an idea how that works? You can't spill too much or define too much in regulations, I think.
Mm.
Wish you could, because that would solve problems. This is the way to do it. And it works.
I mean, the stretch code. I mean, to be frank, it's not really our concern, like, they're gonna get dinged with it anyway, if they go under Act 250 or any substantial development, so. I mean, it's fine that those are their comments, but like,
Yeah.
they're stuck with it, and that wasn't the decision we made, that was a decision made at the state level, so, like, we can move on.
But for the clean heat part of it, where they're not
Yeah.
using fossil fuels or. And I think that in our minutes from last week, we had some big problems, we had. How do you deal with the 85%?
Yeah.
What does that really mean? It means you have two systems.
That's the root of the thing that
And-
I think I was
and-
hoping to hear more about South Burlington from the development comments, but.
And the renewable energy, natural gas, the same thing there. It's like, well, the owner changes and
Mhm.
they say, I don't want it anymore.
Yeah,
So it's, so those, I think those are big hurdles, for the developers now, because right now they have that 85, so they have to buy two systems, I would assume. Unless they get the heat pumps to cover 100% with good insulation or excellent insulation and throwing everything at it.
We have a question?
Yeah.
Kim?
Oh, you're on mute, Kev.
Unmute yourself, please.
This may or may not be the time, but I would like to make a comment about the question of using renewable natural gas in a clean heat standard. So I leave it up to you if you are ready for that kind of comment, but I was considering it is part of your agenda.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so renewable natural gas is still 97% methane. So you're not gaining any advantage over regular fossil gas. It still has to be piped and that methane leaks. The sources of renewable natural gas are not in Vermont. So for example, Vermont Gas has a contract with Seneca Falls landfill, which is a massive landfill in Western New York, where New York City sends all of its garbage now because the current mayor canceled taking food products out of that garbage. So it is generating a huge amount of methane. The best way to deal with methane from landfill is to use it immediately on site to generate electricity. When you're converting it to renewable gas, you're introducing another energy needing process. And that gas from Seneca Falls goes first out to Ohio and then all the way along the Canadian border before it gets to Vermont. So it's leaking all along thousands of miles of pipeline. Another source of renewable natural gas is industrial level farming, which is also pretty condemned for being extremely toxic for anyone who lives near it. It produces a lot of really negative effects. Since we're not producing renewable natural gas in Vermont, the likelihood is that ultimately you end up importing it from abroad, where large amounts of forests are taken down in order to grow crops that produce this renewable natural gas. So from the environmental standpoint, renewable natural gas can actually have a worse carbon impact than fossil gas, which is mind-boggling to think about, but because it comes from so far away and or destroys forests to produce, and the piping, it's still 97% methane. So, and then in addition to that, renewable natural gas has pretty much the same negative health impacts as fossil gas. Both fossil and renewable natural gas produce PM 2.5 in the emissions. This is, teeny particles barely larger than the coronavirus. So it's not something you and I can see or taste or even, it's too small to see it. But medical science now clearly states that PM 2.5, no amount of it is healthy. It is implicated in causing and making worse asthma, COPD, heart issues, cancer, dementia, and mood disorders. And I have scientific articles or videos from the Harvard Chan School of Public Health that verify everything I'm saying here. It's a very toxic emission. Both renewable and natural gas emit nitrogen oxides and VOCs, volatile organic compounds, and those can combine when there's heat and sunlight to form ground level ozone. That causes a variety of health problems, including chest pain, coughing, throat irritation, congestion, can worsen bronchitis, emphysema, and asthma, and can reduce lung function and inflame the lining of the lung. Repeated exposure can permanently scar lung tissue. Volatile organic compounds themselves are carcinogenic. Nitrogen oxide at low levels can irritate eyes, nose, throat, lungs. And at higher levels can cause serious consequences in lungs, including death. So the other things that renewable natural gas also emits benzene, which is a hazardous critical pollutant. The first ones I was going through, PM 2.5, ground level ozone, volatile organic compounds, and nitrogen oxides. Those are within the 6 critical air pollutants that the EPA heavily regulates. In addition, there's 188 hazardous air pollutants, and renewable natural gas emits benzene, which is extremely toxic to humans and animals, causing neurological symptoms, has been connected with leukemia and cancer. It also produces formaldehyde at low levels. Again, it just causes eye, nose, and throat irritation. At higher levels, skin rashes, shortness of breath, changes in lung function, and at highest levels, it's carcinogenic. So you're not getting any health benefit by switching to renewable natural gas, really, and you're definitely not getting a reduction in the leaking of methane. So it's a false solution.
Is that in the burning of the gas, or is it just if you off-gas the landfill in Seneca Falls, just off-gassing the methane anyway? What you're
The
doing
idea
is
is-
capturing it.
You burn the,
Burn it
you
there.
burn methane there for electricity. You just have to
I'm
burn
sorry.
it, you have to burn it in a way that it doesn't reduce, that it doesn't.
Produce methane.
Produce,
Carbon
well-
dioxide.
Methane and all the other bad stuff that sometimes when you burn things straight out of the landfill before it goes to a digester, produces a lot of bad stuff. So you've got to bring it through a digester.
Well, what my point is just that if you don't, like, if you're using that natural gas and you're putting it to use, is it causing all the same chemicals,
Mhm.
just off-gassing? So Seneca Falls is getting all of it, and rather than,
The idea is that you would burn it at the site rather than burning it at distributed locations.
Rather than piping it.
but what if you did say you don't do it? Say you,
Well, yeah.
we're not gonna do it,
Yeah.
doesn't that methane get into the atmosphere anyway?
Yeah.
They flare it.
They would flare because they can't let it just store up in the
Correct.
landfill.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's gonna get burnt in, one way or another, it's gonna get burnt.
So the most effective way of using it in a landfill situation is to build a gas-fired electric generator.
Yeah, which they do at the one up north in
Yeah.
Newport, right?
Yeah.
And then they use it locally to generate electricity.
Right.
Okay, so it's
But they're
gonna
legit-
happen anyway.
legit
My
as hell.
point is that those pollutants they're there. They're a result of the landfill, not of using fossil fuel to heat or electricity.
If you're burning them, where you're burning them, you're emitting them into a population. So piping them thousands of miles is emitting lots of methane that is unnecessary. And burning them in a more heavily populated population area, which is Chittenden County, as opposed to a rural area, you're exposing way more people to the product. Anytime you burn things, you're producing not only greenhouse gases. When you burn methane, it becomes CO2. It's the leaking that's the methane. And then when you burn it, it emits all of this stuff. I can't exactly compare the difference between piping it and then burning it versus converting it to electricity right on site, but for sure, you're not using extra energy to make it into the renewable natural gas when you're just burning it directly on site and making electricity that way. And I would add that the people that live around that landfill are actively trying to shut it down. So, I just am wanting you to realize that renewable natural gas is the same cost to health and climate as fossil gas. And you don't have the same level of emissions when you move to greener sources of generating electricity and generating heat and cooling, like heat
But my
pumps or
point,
ground source heat pumps.
I don't want to belabor it too much, but if you leave the fossil fuel in the ground, it's in the ground. But the landfill is gonna off gas anyway, so it's just a matter of you're using extra energy to convert it to renewable generation, but it's not like it just stays in the ground like fossil fuel does. It gets off gassed at
Right,
minimum.
but so the better
Actually,
process
sure.
is what Vermont is doing. What Vermont is doing is composting food waste, not putting it in a landfill.
Right,
The main
Well-
generator of methane in a landfill is rotting food.
Thank
So
you,
there are
Kim.
solutions other than burning it. You can
I
prevent
didn't mean
it.
to antagonize you, just, trying to get the data.
That's
Thank you.
fine. Yeah, good questions. So, I just noted in some of your reports that you were confused about whether renewable natural gas should be allowed in the clean heat standard. And I would
Well, we
say,
haven't-
please don't.
Okay, thank you. 'Cause we
Okay,
haven't
well-
written the recommendation yet.
And
So,
I don't know the percent, but I would be very skeptical that Vermont Gas is using 100% renewable gas in any of their pipelines. So when they say they're using renewable natural gas, they're using a small percentage of it, charging the consumer more, but the bulk of it is fossil gas. So there's a variety of things that concern me about if the clean heat standard, if the purpose of this is to improve human health and to fight climate change, renewable natural gas does neither.
thank you.
I make comment on that.
We have two more hands up.
Reed? Reed Carr, go ahead. You have to take it off mute first.
I'm trying. I have two mute buttons, so between them, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
we can.
Okay, I got it. Hi, I appreciated Kim's comments, and I think the only thing I would highlight from that is the transmission costs are the things that absolutely are unique to piping it from other places to use here as renewable natural gas. The other effects you can get into whether it's better to burn it on site or burn it elsewhere, but for sure the transmission issues are a problem. But what I wanted to do was just make a comment that since we in Sustainable Williston brought forward the petition, the conversation has been really interesting to see how it's been processed, to think about the practicality of what recommendations to make to the select board. And the only thing that I wanted to bring up tonight was I was spending some time thinking about the developer feedback survey, which I was glad that you all did, because it is an important it's an important perspective to include in the town's decision making. I would be interested if we have future engagement opportunities with developers to understand from them what they think the solutions are, because not doing something doesn't seem like an option really. And so at the end of all of this, my hope is that the recommendation the select board receives is to do something. Exactly what to do as far as the clean heat ordinance is tricky, because some of the various things that we need for our town are perhaps not in conflict, but they're not always in concert with each other. So I know that the Housing Committee is also taking a look at what data is available to understand how these types of policies will affect affordability and availability of housing, which also deserves our attention and the select board's attention. But as I was thinking about the developer feedback, the more I've read it, what I was thinking is this is very representative of a fixed mindset. And what we really need as a town is to figure out how to think with a growth mindset, where we don't want to do things that cause major issues, but we do have to try new things, and we have to find ways to pilot new things. And so I just wanted to say that was my takeaway processing all the developer survey results was there's a lot in there about what we can't do. And what I'm really interested in is learning more about what people like developers and homeowners and renters in town think we can do. And we haven't brought it up with this group yet, but one of the things that's Kim and I have been talking about, and with some others, there was a Rotary presentation on thermal heat networks recently. And a few of the select board members were able to see that presentation. But we may need to look beyond what's been done traditionally in Williston. So if we continue to use the same heating systems, if we continue to use the same building designs that we have in the past, then we are going to find it hard to change how we power those heating systems. But if we begin to think in new ways about how to design buildings and what technologies could be used to use electricity to heat them, I think there are a lot more solutions out there than we actually are acknowledging at this time. And finally, I shared a resource in the chat with Melinda. I was recently at the Department of Energy event in Virginia where they had a building technology office peer review. So all of the organizations that have received funding from the DOE to come up with innovative building technologies, especially around decarbonizing buildings, had to come and present. I was a peer reviewer. I watched a number of presentations and sat in on some others. And my takeaway was there is a lot of technology out there that I've never heard of that is coming through the pipelines. And the Department of Energy was very clear at the event that we need to be installing electrified heating systems as fast as we possibly can if we're going to avoid the worst effects of climate change. And so our challenge here in Williston is to figure out how do we do it in the least impactful way in terms of availability and affordability of housing today, and how do we do it in a way that protects vulnerable populations in the future. Thank you.
Before, Brian, you said you had another comment, reminding people that we don't want people to reiterate what has already been said extensively by other people. So if you're going to comment on RNG, we've already kind of had a long piece on it. I'm not sure what Marcy's comments are. Marcy, would you like to go ahead?
Thank you. I wanted to add that I think it was in June or July, I met with Andrew Chalnick before he presented to the select board. Remember we wanted to just check in with the select board to make sure they were on board, to make so that we wouldn't have to expend all this energy if they weren't going to be on board with it. Andrew said that everybody just put in heat pumps and they didn't mess with secondary heating in terms of like renewable natural gas. He said they don't even use that because the heat pump is enough. So I just wanted to share that. And also that another presenter who was Jack Hansen, who was a city councilor, he brought up the way they worked it with in terms of affordability, that to put in they would have to prove that there was something where they could get a refund or something if
A waiver, yeah. I remember
not a waiver, but they'd have to prove that it was more expensive to put in heat pumps. And no one did it because it just like one person.
One, right.
Yeah, there was one.
There is one, and it is a waiver process that even in the drafting we're writing has that, because you're supposed to prove that the cost of implementation and delivery over a 25-year period is more expensive with the fossil fuel piece versus a traditional method.
Right. So I just wanted to bring that up. And I had a question, which is, I just wonder, because I read over the the developer survey. And I like, as like a citizen of Williston, I just wonder what weight is given to the developer survey and what was the thinking behind it. I just wonder, like, how is it being weighted? And
I don't think it's weighted yet. It was a method of saying as Melinda said, the town has a list of developers that the town works with. Or has on the list. The survey went out to 50-ish people, 50-ish companies. 6 responded. This is an initial feedback. Everybody's comments have some weight eventually. If we, we put out 2 pieces in the local papers and Front Porch Forum and gotten 2 negative feedbacks. We haven't gotten any positive feedback. So it's going to be interesting that when you present to a select board, and if you write a recommendation for a fossil clean heat ordinance, and 400 people stand up in front of the select board and say no, regardless of what us as a committee and Sustainable Williston and others think, we could just get kicked out of the room, because if you talk about waiting, that's where the vote counts.
I have a problem with that.
Yeah, but it depends on, and that's why we have to say okay, we got 6 developers, we need feedback from more. We need to do more research. Based on reading these developers, I did research. I'm glad Reed Carr brought up something about Department of Energy, because I did reading this morning on a large Department of Energy paper that was published this spring with 5 or 6 case studies on apartments. These were retrofits, moving from gas-fired to non-fossil fuel. And it's a big deal to put these in. We're talking about building from the ground up brand new, but still the most for a large scale apartment, talking say 50 to 100 units, one of the most effective boilers is a electric resistance boiler. So you're using electricity, and DOE says, yep, you're not burning fossil fuel, but you're not getting the efficiency of, say, heat pumps and other sources. But from a financial perspective, it's actually one of the most straightforward conversions.
Yeah, because it can use all the existing plumbing and everything,
yeah.
just replacing the source. Yeah.
So Marcia, developers are not necessarily the bad guys, they're the ones doing the work. And they need to be part of the conversation, and we, because we want them to work with us, not against us.
Yeah.
And get a solution that's
It's like any other company.
that is actually, you can build economical houses.
Yeah, and I guess I can speak for the housing committee, because I also staff that committee. But they are generally supportive of a clean heat standard, but they have concerns about how imposing such a standard will impact the affordability of homes. And I recently went to a planning conference, and one of the presentations I went to was if this house won't make money, it's not gonna get built.
Okay.
And it's true. I mean,
It's true.
if a developer can't make money on, a large scale or whatever development, they're not gonna build it, period. So
Yeah.
that is a concern.
Yeah, but it would be great if there was a, like you were saying, a case study that wasn't a retrofit, but that wasn't just anecdotal information, like,
Yeah.
oh, this person thinks it's horrible, this person thinks it's good.
No,
Like
and
a
that's what I-
study, and what are the best practices? Is it thicker walls? Is it, and heat pumps and you're done? to, you know, like,
Right.
but I, you know, I don't think we can do that ourselves. But
No,
maybe a Reed knows, has in one of his papers covers something like that.
Yeah.
We'd certainly be interested in being informed to the best practices and.
Can I
I can
respond?
also,
Can I make another comment?
Hold off, please, for a second. Melinda was gonna speak.
well, and speaking of that, I can send you a link to, an NREL site, ResStock, which is, a good site to kind of mess around with different scenarios and, I don't know, it tells a lot about the economics of different, you know, different strategies like weatherization versus, heat pumps, doing both. And both the carbon emissions and the economics of it, so that could be interesting if you wanna
Yeah.
play around with that.
Make my comment.
Marcy?
Oh, yeah. Well, I just, I was sharing with Reed earlier that it's tricky because this technology is constantly changing, like Melinda alluded to earlier tonight. And also, you know, it would be great if we had a clearinghouse of all this information, like if it was the federal government, let's say, if there was an agency for like, you know, clean energy. And, you know, but there's not. So we all have to just sort of like make our best judgment.
Yeah, and the
And I
DOE
think
might be
we
gone
certainly,
next,
and I think we
next
certainly,
February.
Brian.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said the DOE might be gone next February.
Oh, yeah, right. But
So
I think,
Marcy,
you know
I'm
what?
gonna turn this over to Brian, because he had another comment. Okay,
okay, sure.
thank you.
I just wanted
I also
to,
have to watch the time.
yeah, I just want to remind people that carbon is our enemy and fossil fuel, it's not fossil fuels that is our enemy, it's carbon is our enemy. And renewable natural gas, speaking to, Mark Gas Systems did a weatherization of our house there, it's a small project. And I spoke to a woman there, and I talked about renewable natural gas, I said, well, how much renewable natural gas goes into the pipe? And she said, about maybe 10%. And I said, does this go in a separate pipe? He says, no, this goes into the main pipe. So they're kind of selling us this renewable thing, and not addressing the carbon thing, because the carbon is what is polluting is heating our planet, not the fossil thing. So renewables are not all good if they're like renewable wood biomass. You can burn, you can cut down a forest that are sequestering carbon and call it neutral, because it's under the banner of renewable. And Vermont Gas System has snuck this renewable natural gas sham on us, by putting a small amount in the pipeline and calling it all renewable. So I need to remind people that it's not renewable, not fossil fuels, but it's carbon.
But my point before was methane is also, is more lethal to the greenhouse gas. And it's there, it's
Right.
being created, whether you use it or not. So in effect, it is renewable because it's gonna be emitted one way or another. It's gonna get emitted naturally, just as off gas, or
But
it's
it's
gonna
not
get burnt, or it's gonna get used.
Right,
That's the way I
another
see it.
issue.
That's the way
Kevin,
I
that's
see it.
another issue.
How?
That's
Is it?
That's
It's in
Seneca
the,
Falls'
what's in the
issue.
atmosphere is the issue.
That's Seneca Meadows' issue, that what we're getting is at the max 10%, that's
But
renewable.
that's understandable. I understand how they do, Vermont Gas does the math on that.
Yeah, so it's not, we're not getting 100% renewable and natural gas in our pipeline.
Right.
It's just
I
10%.
understand.
That's true of your electricity too.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
there's lots of times when the electricity you get comes from natural gas fired Especially generation facility in Connecticut.
But we're considering a clean heat standard, and that clean means carbon free. And gas of any sort is not carbon free, so I don't see how that can even
Well,
be
Well,
considered.
neither is your electricity, so then how is
So I-
electricity considered carbon free?
That's under works. We're trying to reduce our carbon
Recirculate.
electricity.
Right, but today,
Right, but it's an ongoing process. You're not gonna get any cleaner gas.
So
It's never gonna transition.
if you pulled all your gas from renewable in Vermont, you would.
No, it's like 10% max.
all right,
And
so
maybe less than
gentlemen,
that.
so I'm gonna cut this off, considering we have 9 minutes to go.
It's right from.
Brian,
Sorry.
thank you. I thank everybody for their comments, and I know Reed, your hand is still up, but I have to watch our time, so I wanna watch. I mean, we have committee recommendations, or we have had a pretty
I mean, I
good
think,
discussion,
yeah,
and we're not ready to write one per se.
right, I mean, so the last time that you actually looked at these recommendations. You kind of worked through all of them, except for this issue around renewable natural gas, so. You know, that's kind of, and obviously this whole discussion is focused on renewable natural gas. So,
I wanna make sure that we get away from, because RNG will never be cost effective enough to make it realistic to go, like, it's never gonna get cheaper, right? It's not like solar panels or anything like that. Like, it's gonna always be too expensive to do it at scale. So that to me is like we should just not even bother talking about it, because the market is gonna take care of that for us. Like, there will be some side projects that help out in some areas, but it's never gonna be a primary fuel.
Right.
So, what we really wanna do, I mean, at least in my opinion, is we wanna figure out how to get developers to install centrally ducted heat pumps that will handle as much of the heating load as possible. And if they have to install a backup heating system, that's okay, but at least with the centrally ducted, the ductwork can share the AC load with heat pump, and I mean, that's what we want, because as
And
the
that
technology
lowers
improves,
the carbon footprint, right?
you know, so yeah, you might run, like, maybe these developers will install something, you know, that's gas fired, but then they also install a heat pump, and then hopefully as the technology improves and the building is built well enough that we get to a point. But if we sort of spend all our time talking about
Yeah,
RNG, then, I mean, the recommendation should really be to drive developers to these centrally ducted systems, because that gives them the most flexibility going forward.
and
That's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
yeah, good.
I mean. Yeah, the fact that. Burlington and South Burlington have included renewable natural gas. It doesn't mean that Williston has to go that route. You can decide like, no, we're not going to, and move on. But that's your.
Yeah, I think our last conversation we had, it showed up in the minutes, was that. It's, you know, you could build to that, so, but then the next tenant says, I don't wanna pay for that anymore.
Right,
So it's totally pointless. It's actually, because you can't say, you know, like, have a lifetime watch over that residence, that they make sure they still pay the higher bill, right? We're not gonna do
It would
that.
be 10 times the cost of any other.
Yeah, we're just, so I think we have to, maybe, do we have to nix it on the economics? Of
On the
the
feasibility.
fact that we can't patrol and, you know, have, like with affordable housing, you have. What's the term to
perpetuity.
in perpetuity? We can't with RNG, can we do perpetuity? I don't know how.
Yeah, I mean, if you went to VGS and said, you have to guarantee that this house is always RNG, they're gonna say, no, that's
Right.
not our job.
And
And
I said, how are we gonna control the next 10?
Yeah, they can't.
So
still
we
like
can,
10%.
take it out of our recommendation.
Yeah.
Because at this point, we're still a working
That's what you're
document.
gonna do.
Save a lot of time and conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we've
It's-
had
I
a
mean,
lot
that's
of
true.
valuable conversation with a lot of good input from people today, so thank you all. It is 4 minutes of 8. The only other thing we had here was, the Observer article for November, which will be published the day after Thanksgiving. I have to submit it on the 23rd. Do you have any thoughts you were gonna write
Yeah,
an article?
we're good to 23rd,
Yeah, I need it to be somewhat before that, yeah.
22nd, 11:30 p.m.
No.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I,
Yeah, I'll try to get you some this weekend.
I can't even remember what topic you were writing on this time.
I think just talking about the transition into winter, weatherization, renewable
Oh,
natural gas.
yes,
Just
yes.
kidding.
Yeah.
Yes, but that kind of, yes.
Yeah, like
yes.
button up, I mean, the campaign's wrapped up, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
All
But
right,
usually is it shared with the whole group?
it is, yeah.
Uh,
I try to
Post it
send
to
things
share.
last minute, so there's
Yeah.
no negative comments.
Folks, the other thing is, next meeting is the day before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I canceled my bike.
Personally, I'm not gonna be here. If you guys still wanna meet, I can probably get somebody to staff it, but if you wanna just cancel it.
I,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Family
with me.
family coming, I don't want to be here.
Yeah,
okay,
and then you will have one
Supposed
meeting
to
in
give
December
you
as
an
well.
excuse to get out of the house.
Because the
Oh.
25th is,
Like, who's that?
Christmas,
Okay,
so just FYI.
and then we'll have 4 meetings in January.
No.
Can I just ask?
More
what
time
the-
needed.
What the
What?
timeline is to provide the recommendations to the select board? I apologize for interjecting.
ASAP,
I just,
Really?
yeah,
yeah,
They are.
Oh.
Were they discussed
they've been discussed,
at the meetings I missed?
several times,
Oh, really?
yeah.
You mean the select board is discussed? Oh,
No, you guys have discussed this
Yeah.
for months.
I know
But
that the
anyway.
housing committee needed maybe one more time. Is that maybe going to be discussed this month, Melinda, for the finalized recommendations from
Yeah.
housing committee?
Right. Which will be, well, actually will be next week, because they're having their meeting on the 20th. So. Yep. So, yeah, sooner the better.
And it just seems to me with new build, insulation, ceiling. And that it just you should be able to make that work with a heat pump.
I would think.
Yeah, I mean, they design it so that it works.
People are doing it.
Maybe you can't have big windows.
Well, there's, yeah,
Expensive windows.
maybe I'll pass around
Like
that
those?
article, that
The low.
that report that you,
The DOE
the
one?
DOE
Yeah,
report too.
there's a lot to that. It's like
Yeah.
70 pages long.
Oh, so
I know,
probably
read
not
that.
all of that.
I read it this morning, a lot.
Comes out of that NREL is pretty
Yeah,
dense.
so Reed, if you have any papers, you wanna share with us,
I will-
practices.
I'll try to share some. Yeah, sounds like maybe that early,
Today's technology, we really can't plan for tomorrow's technology.
yeah. I reached out to a new contact I made at that event at DOE to try to get the right person to help municipalities, because there's a lot of, different resources for builders versus people doing retrofits versus, these different things. And we really need resources that are designed to help municipalities who are working more on policy and less on the actual building of the buildings. But I just wanted to understand whether this was going to be discussed again, either the day before Thanksgiving, sounds like no. And so the next opportunity to finalize this would be early December, is that right?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
probably should finalize it the 11th. but-
Mhm.
We do
Okay.
have some sort of standing decisions to make about, the RNG, what's gonna apply to multifamily,
Yeah,
commercial.
I thought that.
I thought that was already settled, but yeah.
So did I,
Yeah.
Well, how do we settle it? Forget.
We said everything,
Okay, yeah.
it applies to
Ultimately-
everything new.
It says ultimately they decided to include non-residential development.
Yeah,
Not that you couldn't change your mind.
Right, and then we would have the waiver for affordable. Right, to
Yeah, a
allow.
similar waiver to the other towns, yeah.
I mean, it behooves us to do something as aggressive as possible and let the select board either tone it back or not.
I guess so, yeah,
They're not gonna make it more aggressive, right?
right.
Unlikely.
And then most of all, most important is to get a building inspector to make sure that they do the insulation, that air sealing correctly.
Yeah. The building
Yeah, so you
inspector-
don't end up with heat pump system that doesn't work because the home
Yeah.
doesn't trap the heat.
Right. Because unless you see what's behind the sheetrock, you don't know.
Mhm.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank
All
you.
right, it is 8:02. No one has
Not
any
too bad.
objections, so we adjourn.
You're here.
Yes.
Well, have a good Thanksgiving.
Thank you, everybody that's been online.
Thank you for your service on